What are the biggest mistakes you need to avoid when you are scaling from 0 to 30K as a B2B consultant, as a B2B agency owner? This is my journey. I have reached a solid $30,000 revenue in this year so far. It's currently September 2023. And I wanted to share also more as like a retrospective for myself. I wanted to share what are the biggest needle movers and what are the biggest mistakes that people make, especially that I made, but that also that I see many people make who I help on this business journey. And what are all these things so that you can avoid making the same mistakes and so you can focus on the biggest needle movers as you're scaling from stage to stage. So who is this for? This is for people who are providing any kind of B2B service, any kind of high ticket offer. This is not for people who want to be selling $150 products as online entrepreneurs, get wide reach, become niche famous, and that kind of stuff. This is not what we're going for. We just want to get high ticket clients for a B2B offering. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And what makes me credible in this is that I've now worked with over 120 people, helping them on this very journey, helping them to scale from sometimes 0 to 30K a month. And I've spoken to several hundreds more when I, for example, have a sales call with someone, and I keep seeing people repeating the same mistakes over and over again. So I want you to not make these mistakes. So let's get into it. I have a little visual here that we can go through and that hopefully will be really, really useful to you. Okay, so let's get started at the lowest tier. When you're at 0 or below 10K a month, here's what I believe you should be focusing on and what are the biggest mistakes, what are the biggest needle movers in your situation. So first of all, who do I assume that you are? I presume that you are somebody who's, for example, still employed, but you have very clear and marketable skills, B2B skills. That could be sales. That could be any form of consulting, any form of functional expertise that you can sell as a consulting service, expertise service to other businesses. It could also be something like executive coaching, right? When you are really good at that, you have some proof that people actually wanted to pay for your advice. Then, of course, you can also use this framework to scale to $30,000 a month. It also works for when you are relatively young, you don't have much of an expertise. In that case, the path to 30,000 will simply be longer. You will need much more time to spend at the 0 to 10K mark, where you add value to people, where you learn the tricks of the trade, where you learn how to deliver value. And then you can, after, let's say, 6-12 months, you can start scaling beyond that. I think it would be unreasonable and unrealistic to expect that you, as a young person who's just starting out, would get to beyond 10K without much expertise in less than a year. But, things have happened. If you are someone who has the expertise, who just needs to figure out how to get clients, how to keep clients, how to deliver good value to them, in that case, that scaling from 0 to 30K a month could literally be done within 6 months. It's probably a stretch, but it is absolutely possible. And now thinking back where I was, it's taken me over 6 years to get to this point. Actually, how much was that? Like 5.5 years to get to this very point where I am now at 30,000 a month. And I see how the curve starts to go up exponentially. I really do expect, I don't put a timeline on it, but I do expect to reach 100K months in the next 12 months or so. But, you shouldn't tempt the universe. You should never put a timeline to it. But I'm putting everything in place so that $100,000 months become a very real possibility soon. But as you are starting out, the path to 30,000 can be anywhere from 6 months to, as in my case, 5.5 years. I'm recording this video so that it does not take you 5.5 years. That is absolutely not necessary. And I've made many mistakes that are in this visual. So let's get into them and let's hope that, and let's make sure that you avoid making those mistakes yourself. So the path to 30,000 months. Let's look at the first tier from 0 to 10K. How should your time be split? There, I would strongly recommend that 80% of your time is spent on prospecting and sales, because you're not going to be very good at it. You just need to make up for low quality of how you work with volume. That means, and this always is like a mind blower to most people who I speak to at that level, that they need to be speaking to or approaching 100 people every day. I know it sounds like undoable, but it is. When you imagine if you were to just approach people on LinkedIn or cold email, you just scrape their emails. I recommend to use Sales Navigator in combination with a tool called Everboot. You can just simply scrape people's email addresses and send them semi-personalized emails. What does that mean? You send them a standard email with one line at the top, personalized. That is truly personalized. And that is also personalized in a relevant way, not just, hey, I saw that you also like champagne. I also like champagne. Let's toast, right? Or something like nonsense like this. But it should really be something like, hey, I looked at your website. I really love what you're doing. I really like the testimonial that you did with John Smith, right? That kind of stuff, where you just actually show them that a human looked at their profile and not just a robot that you had it done by AI and some AI scraped their alma mater or something like that. Okay. And so 80% should be prospecting and sales. Most people make this huge mistake, me included. I did this for 3.5 months, if you can believe it, doing my website, creating a beautiful website, making drawings for the website. I had like a little cartoon streak there, created a logo, and I was long agonizing over the name of the company. I was doing that for 3.5 months, if not 4, maybe even 5, that I was still wondering about what the name of my business should be. I actually remember only in February, I landed on the name for my business, which was Content 360 back then. And that was in February. I was let go in September. I was fired in September in 2016. And only in February, I finally landed on the name. And I did not get many clients in between. I think I had 1 client in that time. Crazy. It was a huge mistake. I see many people making that mistake. Just put out volume. You do not need a website at this point. Crank out 100 connection requests and 100 cold emails every day, and you will see how quickly you will get clients. Okay, so 80% of your time should be spent prospecting and sales. And sales means you speak to people on calls, and it does not necessarily have to be a hardcore sales pitch. You could just be doing market research for it. You could just ask people, hey, I want to do XYZ. I want to provide supply chain consulting. You've been in this business for a long time. I promise I have nothing to sell to you, but I would greatly appreciate 15 to 20 minutes of your time so that I can ask you questions. If you ask this to 20 people, one of them will say yes, and you can ask them all kinds of questions that you want. But spend 80% on this. Do not waste your time on creating content. Put out content so that, like, let's say, once or twice a week, you put out a short LinkedIn post where you post one interesting observation about your area. This is just to signal to people that you are in business, that you actually mean it, what you're doing, that you don't have any other activities going on, but don't spend too much time on content, creating elaborate videos and so on. This will not be the big needle mover. The 90% of your first year's revenue, if not 95%, will come from outbound, from you actually approaching people. Initially, of course, leveraging your network first. That's clear, low-hanging fruit. But don't spend too much time on content. You spend 0 time on the website. And as soon as you get clients, of course, there has to be a certain level of delivery. You have to deliver to your clients. But I presume that at this point, in the first couple of months, you will be doing way more prospecting and sales and much, much less in delivery. Okay? Now, how much are you working? You are working 60 hours a week if you have a family and 80 hours a week if you don't have a family. To me, that's a non-negotiable. Many people will balk at that. But if you want to start a business, there's a lot of value at the upper levels. All right. So what do I mean by that? If you, for example, work 20 hours, somebody who works 20 hours is starting their agency, and somebody who works 80 hours a week starting their agency. It's not that the second person will make 4 times faster progress. Probably the second person will make 10 times faster progress, or even 20 times. Because this kind of intensity is like when you bundle the sun's rays through a looking glass and you focus in on one point, the more you can bundle, the bigger your magnifying glass is, then the more sun rays you're bundling, the hotter it can get. The number of hours you actually work per week matters a great deal. And I don't mean bullshit work. I don't mean constantly being distracted, something pinging and so on. No, I really mean focused work. If you manage to pull that off 80 hours a week, if you don't have a family, then you will get to 10K a month within 3 months, maybe 4, 5, 6, but it absolutely is possible. So just simply work a lot. There is great value in this incremental work. Like, yes, of course, there is also decreasing value. Like if you already work 80 hours and you just add 10 more hours so that you work 90, those incremental 10 hours will probably be a net negative, right? You will then be tired. You will be like demoralized, and then probably you will not sleep enough. You will probably have your family relationships will deteriorate to a point where it's going to be a net negative on your business. I want you to find the maximum possible hours that you can work, 0 distractions, no hobbies. Your only thing is your work and just maintaining your health. This is what some people call dark mode. Alex Becker calls it nightmare mode. But it is effectively just completely cutting yourself off from the world and truly focusing on your business. Okay. But of course, you don't have to do it this way. I did not do it. Right now, in retrospect, I realized that I should have done this and I would have achieved my goal, or I would have gotten to 30K months way, way faster. I was truly bumbling around. Like, I was just socializing. I even went to, like in 2017, I went to Albania for 2 months to be like an entrepreneur in residence, to advise local entrepreneurs. I made very little progress with my own business. Maybe I was working, if you add it all up, 20, 30 hours a week on my business, and that's why it took me 5.5 years to reach even reasonably high revenue levels. So the more you can bundle this into compress the time frame, it's going to take you, maybe if you don't have really good guidance, it's going to take you between 500 and 1,000 hours to build client acquisition systems. If you work, I always tell my clients that if you work with us, this is kind of part of my pitch, we can compress those 1,000 hours down to 200, 250, because I'm going to guide you. You will compress the time it takes you, and we can do it much faster. But usually if you're kind of on your own, if you just use, Hormozy videos to help you get started, then I would say that it's going to take you 500 to 1,000 hours to build really solid client acquisition systems so that you have a self-sustaining, let's say, freelance or small consulting business. Okay. So the more you can compress that time and the more intensely you can work, the faster you will get to your goal. Okay, what are the biggest needle movers in this context? Well, it's definitely outbound, right? That's what most people completely disregard. They think they will activate their network, and they should, but they should activate their network really quickly. I mean, in your network, there's maybe 100 people who are quite close to you, and let's say 1,000 people who you just know, who would recognize your name. Okay, just as a rough number. So just get through that. Contact those 100 people. There you should probably make it more personalized. So contact 20, 30 people a day. So you can go through these 100 people in a week and go through the 1,000 people that you know, who know your name, also in, let's say, 1 or 2 weeks. And then after 3 weeks, you have gone through your entire network and you can start doing outbound with strangers. It was a huge epiphany for me when in 2019, I closed my first client who was a complete stranger through outbound. It was also facilitated through my content. So he responded on my content. And then I went on a call with him and closed him on the call. He actually even paid on the call. That was unbelievable to me. It was like a revolution in my life. It was the 5th of December, 2019. I'll always remember that. And that is absolutely possible. You can close people on the first call when they're a complete stranger. Okay, but you have to get to that point first, harvest your first degree network. How to do that in detail is going to be in an upcoming video. Click like and subscribe on this channel so that you get notified when the new video comes out, or even better, go to our email list. The link is going to be in the description where you can subscribe to our email so that you don't miss that video. But there I'm going to go through the topic of how can you leverage your warm network, your existing network, and do that step by step. Okay, so the biggest needle mover here is going to be outbound. Very also important needle mover is only have one avatar, one offer, and one channel. Don't try to sell different things to different people. There is strengths, again, just like in the working more hours, it will be another factor that greatly increases your success if you truly focus only on one persona. Just to give an idea, I was doing all kinds of stuff. Right? In my first couple of years, I was doing things as wide-ranging as writing a newsletter for a VC firm. I was writing a travel guide for a company, and I was editing a textbook of 2 business school professors. I was also creating thought leadership books for HR tech companies. I was all over the place. And I think up to a point that is fine if you just truly need that money. If you don't, if you can afford to go a couple of months, 2-3 months without much revenue, but can really zoom in on your ideal avatar with the goal of only selling them one thing, you're going to be flying much, much faster. And you're not going to be languishing in this zone of being a, jack of all trades when you're doing all kinds of stuff. My sort of connective tissue at the time, the thing that was kind of like the common denominator of everything I was doing, was that I write, right? I know how to write. I'm pretty good at it. And so I was therefore doing anything that has to do with words. I was writing newsletters. I was editing a textbook. I was writing thought leadership books for companies, but there was no common thread beyond that. I know how to write, right? And now it's much more narrow. And that's why also I'm much more successful than I used to be. So, and the biggest mistakes that people make at this level, oh, there's plenty of them. First of all, is falling in love with their idea. I see this all the time with inexperienced people. They are experienced in their profession. They know how to do the thing. They just don't know how to get clients, how to formulate an offer. And they very often don't think like capitalists. They don't think like, okay, what does the market want? What does the market tell me? They instead fall in love with one idea and they just insist that this is the idea that they have to be selling. I had to several times, even some of my clients, it was really hard to get them away to fall out of love with the idea, because I don't want to be too pushy. And I want to keep an open mind when they are insisting that, hey, I think this will sell. But very often we start working on something. They believe something will sell. At some point, I tell them, okay, where's the evidence that this will sell? What makes you say that you believe that, right? Because then I start pushing back. If they've tried hundreds and hundreds of approaches, no one's responding, I'm thinking, is this really selling? And just to prove that, I always ask them, hey, in order to prove that this is selling, find a company who is selling the same thing. Show me a website of a company who does that, and then let's evaluate. Let's use their copy. Let's use their messaging to simply replicate what they have. Okay. And if you cannot find, or if it's really hard to find even one or two companies who do that, maybe you're on the wrong track. Maybe we should sell something a bit more mainstream. And I always say you can copy your way to $10,000 months very easily. I mean, it's not very easily, but you absolutely can copy your way there. And I even strongly recommend it. Don't be creative. And that's the next one. Exotic offers, right? It's very similar to the first one. People mostly fall in love with an exotic offer because they always think, oh, this doesn't exist yet. There's no one selling this stuff yet. I'm going to be rich in no time. Because there's usually a reason for why something doesn't exist yet. And that is that there's simply no demand for it. Now, I don't want to be negative and just say for anything you come up with, there's no demand. But if you are starting out, you see there's currently one thing not being offered by the market, and you still insist that you want to sell this, 99% of the time, you're going to be wrong. You're going to be on the wrong track. And instead, you should just do something that other people are selling, where you just simply compete. You just try to be better. You can maybe compete a little bit on price in the beginning. You can give discounts. Hey, you're going to be my first client. I'm going to give you a massive discount. That's fine. Maybe even work for free. That's possible. But don't come up with exotic offers that you think, wow, there's something completely new in the market. It's a very, very bad idea. The next mistake that people have is distractions, right? And that I don't mean even in the micro where you get easily distracted by pinging things on your computer, although that is a big thing. But distractions like someone suggests that, hey, you should be going to this networking event because there's a lot of people who could use you. So you go to this networking event, you research it, and then nothing comes of it. But then somebody tells you, well, but you haven't done this. Choose one channel. If you believe networking events are the thing and it's repeatable, these networking events happen regularly, and you, after doing this 5 times, for example, you got yourself a client, great. Then focus on this and do only this, just that one channel. I'm not a fan of networking events, for example. I'm not a fan of networking events and generally events because I think they're very unscalable. You always have to go there. You always have to look good. There's no scalability. You cannot be doing it at midnight. So I'm not a fan of this, but if you believe this is your channel, then do it. But then don't get distracted. Okay. That is what many people do, is that one of the best distractions that I had is somebody offered me £500, I believe it was at the time, to record a song for a kid's toy because I speak Czech. And they needed somebody who knows how to speak Czech and who knows how to sing. And so I recorded a song for a children's Fisher-Price bathtub toy. And I was traveling all the way to somewhere in the middle of nowhere in the UK, and to go to a music studio to record for 1 hour, I was recording a song, right? I mean, it's decent money, £500 for an hour, but still, I sacrificed almost a full day for it. And it is a distraction. I'm not building my business. I'm just doing something for cash. Okay, so avoid distractions. Also, one of the biggest mistakes is varying offers, offering different things to different people. I already said that. I was editing a textbook for professors and so on. Now, again, these are not mistakes if you believe that you just need that cash. You need to bring some cash in. That's fine. Ideally, the less of this you do, the less of this you see as a virtue, but more as a necessary evil, the less of it you will do. Okay. Some people see it as great, and that is the problem. I recently spoke to a guy who actually had a really well-working offer, but he also accepted gigs for sales training, right? That was not his main thing, but he just did it because it was easy money. It's not a good idea. You will not scale to $1 million if you're also doing some gigging on the side. So don't do varying offers. Focus on that one offer as much as you can. Also, what a huge mistake that people make is low customer lifetime value, LTV stands for lifetime value offers. That is a big mistake where people simply go after offers that are going to pay $1,000, $2,000 a year, and they spend a lot of time developing that one customer. As a rule of thumb, I strongly recommend that you choose something that pays at least $5,000 as customer lifetime value. If it's an ongoing retainer, don't accept anything under $1,000, better out $2,000. Usually the best kind of deal, once you're at your best delivering services, $2,000 a month should translate into 4 hours worked per week, which means if you have 10 clients, you're getting $20,000 and you're working 40 hours a week. Okay. So that's a low lifetime value offer. Try to avoid that at all costs. And then, of course, pointless busy work, designing a website, designing a logo. You don't need anything. If you truly believe that in your domain, you need to have a website, give yourself a 1 day maximum. You just throw something up on Squarespace or on Cart, but don't spend more time on any kind of busy work. The only thing that matters, 80% of your time should be spent on outbound and sales. Okie doke. So let us now look at the next stage of 10 to 20K. This is where we'd be looking at a slightly different time span. At that level, when you're providing some kind of done-for-you service, consulting, agency work, etc., there you will be quite busy with delivering if you're making between 10 and 20K. So we'd be looking at some 60% of delivery time, 30% of prospecting and sales, and 10% of content, right? This will vary, of course, depending on how much work you have. Ideally, you try to reduce your delivery time because there will be some menial tasks that you can outsource to a virtual assistant. That is highly recommended. There is, in most consulting jobs, there is always something that can be done, either can be automated or can be done by somebody who you're paying whatever, between $5 and $10 an hour. And that is extremely easy to get. These people tend to be very easy to train as well for simple tasks. And so it would be foolish for you to do all the work yourself if this kind of intrudes on your life quality. But of course, we don't know. And maybe you just want to build up all maximum cash as much as you can possibly. So sure, go for it. I just think that doing this kind of split where you 60% delivery in that bracket and you 30% is prospecting and sales is quite a good breakdown. Still at this point, I would prioritize prospecting and sales over content. Content is of course important in the long run, but I'd like to build up a solid revenue level. To me, this starts at 30K, but it could be different for different people. But I just prefer to get to that as fast as possible. And prospecting and sales is the way to go. It's just content will take a long time to build up, even if you were to dedicate a lot of time into it. And also prospecting and sales is really great because you want to have a lot of experience built up, right? You want as many clients as fast as possible because then your content is also going to be better. If you were to, let's say, as an expert supply chain consultant, but without clients, if you've only been employed so far and you put out content, you will quite likely be doing this from a very limited horizon of experience. Whereas if you have had plenty of clients, the content will be all the better because you will really see what matters to the client. If you're an employee at a company, it's going to be, you will not probably have access to the C-level at the client's firm, or you will only see a small slice of your company's own supply chain situation. So your content will simply be much better if you have clients who you're delivering to. To get clients, prospecting and sales is much faster than content itself. So that's why I deprioritize content as well. And you'll notice that I also put 0% still on website and logo. I really don't think that you need a website or a logo, except in maybe a few sub-industries where people really would judge you harshly if you didn't have a website. Even at that level, it's still enough if you have a one-pager Squarespace website with some client testimonials and some basic information about what you do, some client testimonials and a Calendly booking link. That's perfectly well enough. And the logo, you can easily do that in Canva, especially these days when AI can create a logo very, very quickly. There's no excuse for spending too much time on that. Okay, again, work it's all the same, right? 60 hours a week, and if you have a family, 80 hours a week if you're single. I don't think there's an excuse and a reason to change that in any way. Okay, what are the biggest needle movers here? Biggest needle movers at this stage are client results, because they will both feed your content as well as get you more clients. So I would truly focus. This is why we dedicate quite a lot of time to delivery. Client results are super, super key. And still, again, one avatar, one offer, one channel. You don't want to make this complicated. Okay. And the biggest mistakes that people make, now it gets really interesting. Now, at this level, people very often kind of see the dollar signs in their eyes, and they are just cash hungry, which can lead to a lack of focus. I recently spoke to a gentleman who actually had a really good business going on, but he kept being tempted by, the occasional coaching and training offer here, training offer there. And that is lack of focus. He will never be able to build a business to $1 million a year if he does these kind of ad hoc gigs. I already mentioned that. Then, of course, one thing is, because you get really busy with clients, one big risk is that you drop the ball on a core activity. For example, you get busy one week with prospecting and sales, you just stop doing it. And that is a really bad idea. You should always be prospecting and selling, because if you get to a point where you cannot deliver anymore, it is much better to build out systems that can help you deliver. For example, get on a part-time support person, get on an employee, get a virtual assistant, whatever it is. Do not drop the ball on either content or prospecting and sales. I know it is very tempting to think, oh, I'm so busy, I just cannot do it. Always try to maintain that. Of course, client results are the most important thing. In the very worst case, if you just need to firefight with the client, sure, drop the ball on the core activity, but it will set you back more than just 1 week taken out of 52 weeks per year. You lose a lot of momentum. Definitely not recommendable to do that. Another big mistake is you start to leverage too early. Right? If you at this point were to hire a full-time employee, for example, to help you, or if you try to just generally get delivery outsourced to someone, if you're below 20K, I don't think this is a good idea to do. Above 20K a month, absolutely starts to make sense. If you want to build a consulting firm or a larger agency, then it makes sense to hire. I would try to, most importantly, get client results. That's the most important thing. And do not leverage too early. Leverage, I mean, of course, either hiring people to help you deliver or build another vehicle. We'll cover that in the next bracket. Build another vehicle that can make you money while you sleep effectively. In my case, for example, that is a coaching program, a recorded set of videos that teaches you how to do something. And you can that way leverage media and software, or even building a complete product, right? You're still too small at a too small stage. You didn't have enough experience with getting client results that you would actually be able to build a good product. So I would suggest that you really get comfortably above 20K, do this for several months before you start to do any kind of leveraging. And of course, lack of discipline. Very often when we get this kind of revenue, that is usually, it allows us to also start saving a little bit. The discipline is very difficult to maintain. We can get complacent. Those are the biggest mistakes that people make at this level. Okay, and then at 20 to 30K, what happens there? There, the time split becomes a little bit different. Now you should start to build a leverage vehicle. That's why I say 40% should be on delivery to existing clients, which also then includes building a product. And this is kind of split over delivery and then the bracket of systems that I've put here. Systems is anything that helps you to scale your delivery. Either that is by hiring employees, by building a coaching product, by building a knowledge base, or even building a software product. That's quite possible. Just keep going with delivery, right? Don't drop the ball immediately. Do the transition gradually, right? Don't just say, okay, done for you clients are all gone, and now I'm only focusing on coaching clients. Still keep doing prospecting and sales at about 20% of your time. Of course, at this point, you should have somebody to do, for example, prospecting for you. You can also look at whether it would be worthwhile to get a salesperson for you. Totally depends on your average customer lifetime value, of course, and the model that you're selling at. For example, in my case, I'm selling a product anywhere between $10,000 and $20,000, and I can take on, at this point, practically an unlimited number of clients. So for me, it makes a lot of sense to get a salesperson. If you're selling whatever, 5 to 10K a month retainers and can at most take on 3, maybe 2, 3, 4 clients, and you have good retention, then of course it does not make much sense to continue with prospecting and sales unless you're also building systems that can help you deliver to them, right? So it's a balancing act. There's no hard and fast rule. The point here is that you will be less involved in delivery and doing more in terms of systems building so that you can scale naturally. Here, I also recommend that you start ramping up content. At this point, you have quite a bit of credibility. You've served several clients. You can talk about those results that you got for clients, of course, subject to confidentiality agreements. But then content will start to have much more weight. You see how this is what I keep seeing, that people do content much early. They have no idea what they're talking about. I mean, they maybe know the idea and theoretically what they're talking about, or they have it copied and recycled from other people, but it's not coming from genuine client success. And so that's why I think early on content is truly very of low relevance, and it then gradually increases in relevance. And there will come a time when you yourself personally are only involved at, let's say, 0.5% in prospecting and sales. You only effectively firefight. You have people running that for you, but content will become more and more important, right? Look at Alex Ramosi, for example. He, at this point, does 0 prospecting and sales, and a lot of his time is creating content, naturally, because his content is far more valuable than anybody else's in his organization. So it makes a lot of sense for him from a promotion standpoint to create his own content. And then finally, here at this point, I give you permission to actually build a website and a logo. I still think that, my coach himself got to $1 million a month with a simple landing page with a video, a calendar link, and testimonials. I plan to do the same. And so you still don't need much, but at this point, it would make sense to have some kind of website, something that adds a little bit more credibility to what it is that you do. Maybe invest in a logo, but never spend more than $100 on a logo. It just won't make much of a difference. Okay. And guess what? In terms of work, you still work 60 hours a week if you have a family, 80 hours a week if you're single. I know this is a little bit repetitive, of course, but the point that I want to drive home here is that if you're building a business, the amount of work that you're putting in truly matters, and it doesn't stop at any level. If you want to stop growth, if you want to stall growth, then you can, of course, start working less. And growth might not immediately stop, but there is a lag time effect. And if you start working, whatever, you want to take it easy, you work 20, 30, 40 hours a week, you will sense it. You will experience that 3 months later. Right? So this stuff matters. Either you're in it for the big games or not. And if you want to stay anywhere between 10, whatever, and 20K or 0 to 20K, sure, then you can sort of stop. But if you want to keep growing, you just cannot stop. As long as you're in growth mode, this kind of applies all the time. And you will not be taking much time off. This is going to be very little vacation, if any, and very little socializing. I know that doesn't sound fun, but who said that building $1 million business is fun? It can be fun, but it's not necessary to be expected. Cool. Biggest movers is, of course, at this level is the leverage vehicle. So what do we mean with this? I hinted at that already. For example, a group coaching model. So in my case, I take on my clients and they come into 2 weekly calls, group calls. Maximum we've ever had in a group was 7 people. So it's not huge, right? But it's still very efficient because they ask questions in a very targeted way. I respond. I help them to solve their problems. And even they among themselves can then help each other out. They build some relationships, and they themselves can then also in the future connect with each other. We've had several clients in the Alpha Lead Academy who become each other's client, right? So that definitely happens. So the leverage vehicle this is one of the leverage vehicles that you have. Another one, of course, would be to hire a team and start delivering for you. It will not be possible for everyone, but you can at least have people who do those more simple tasks for you, and you can gradually, it kind of comes from the bottom. You do the most menial tasks. You can get a virtual assistant for that for $5 to $10 an hour, or you can then get higher with actual client delivery, client facing work, and something like account management. You can get somebody so that you yourself can be working less. Those are all leverage vehicles. And in case you're not familiar with the 4 leverage vehicles that Naval Ravikant mentions, this is kind of the industry standard at this point. There's 4 leverage vehicles. One is people. So you hire employees. Capital, you get someone's money so that you can build those systems without getting paid for a while. Then there would be code and media. Code being you build a software product, and media is that you make yourself semi or niche famous or completely famous, who knows. And so those are the 4 leverage vehicles. I would consider skills also as a leverage vehicle. So if you can invest in your skills to become so like completely out of this world good, then of course that is a leverage vehicle, because you can then charge multiples of what other people are charging. Best example, if you become the best copywriter in the world, you can get such good deals that no way anybody making an hourly wage could ever match that. Right? So skills are of course a leverage vehicle. The other big needle mover is of course one avatar, one offer, one channel. You can get to $1 million with just doing that. Does not necessarily have to be just one channel. It's like if you've mastered LinkedIn client acquisition, then why not move to cold email? Makes a lot of sense. But one channel also means like it's more or less the same type of contacting the client, right? So email and LinkedIn in-mail and messages are a little bit similar. So you can stick to that, and that is still can be considered one channel, although it's 2 technically speaking. But what I would strongly advise against is that you devise another complex strategy here. For example, you run ads to a landing page and then you do live events and so on. That gets really complicated. If you have proven that you can get clients via cold email, for example, then just leverage that, use that and make the most of it and get to $1 million in revenue a year, right? So you can still do that with one avatar, one offer, one channel. And the biggest mistakes that people make here is, again, cash hunger leads to lack of focus. You're taking on too much, because while it will still give you good cash, it prevents you from scaling much faster. So this is why at this point, when we're at 30K, I've dropped everything that I was doing on the done for you side, the agency side, and I'm completely focusing purely on that one leverage vehicle that I have. And then a big mistake here, of course, is that you don't have a vehicle. You just keep trying to brute forcing it. You just keep doing delivery work. You keep consulting. You keep doing agency work. And that leads to burnout, because at some point, if you do that kind of work and the majority of it is in client delivery, you don't work on the business. Things get complicated. You provide different things to different people. It gets messy. And very often that lack of systems then leads to burnout. So we have to catch ourselves in this bracket of 10 to 20K, to catch ourselves early enough before we get to that point where things get really busy and messy. And we have to start building that vehicle, maybe say no to a couple of gigs coming your way so that you can build that vehicle. Okay. And that was the bracket 20 to 30K. What happens beyond 30K? Well, this is basically just I can hypothesize. This is something that I'm working on right now, but my hypothesis is simply more of the same. Like right now, we're reaching out to anywhere from 50 to 100 people every day. Well, what if I scaled that and grew this to 300 to 400 a day, right? Would I 3 to 4x my revenue? That is to be seen. And that is what we're going to be exploring in the next few months. So my hypothesis is it should be more rather than better and new. I mean, I will continuously try to improve my cold emails. That is true, of course. So a little bit of better happens as well. But my numbers so far are good enough that if I simply just 4x'd my volume, I could get to my interim goal, which is the next kind of stage that I want to reach, which is $1 million a year, 100,000 a month in revenue. So more is the hypothesis. New, what does new mean? New means, of course, new channels, right? So if, for example, I'm starting to build YouTube, I'm putting out these videos on YouTube, of course, but that is not something I expect to yield anything anytime soon. I'm just going to put out these videos consistently, and maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years from now, something will come from that. So I don't really care. Even if it doesn't do anything, it helps me articulate my thoughts. It forces me to be concise and to become a better public speaker. So all of that is really useful and great, but for the time being, until I hit 100K a month, I'm just going to focus on more. Cool. That was it. That's how you scale from 0 to 30K. I really genuinely believe, after I've been through this, that if you really put your nose to the grindstone, you put quite a big effort into it, you can get there in a year's time, provided that you are already competent in a specific field. If you're a complete beginner, then this would be really hard to get to 30K in a year's time, but then it might take 2 or 3 years, right? But it's absolutely not impossible. And I hope that this was useful in giving you a bird's eye view on this kind of growth trajectory. Please let me know if you implement it and it works for you. I'd love to hear from you. And if we can help you get clients, there's a link in the description. Click it and you'll get to a sales video where I tell you how we could help you build client acquisition systems and stop depending on referrals. Okay, talk to you later. Bye.